All right. Well, I wanted to go ahead and make a video with all of the steps needed to get started using React Native with VS Code. Now, I just want to preface that these settings are specific for my students, although I think many people can find them helpful. And I am also helping walk this through for classroom setup as well as your personal computer. So for starters, we're going to be using this Expo Go app in order to run our code. So if you don't already have this app on your phone or iPad, you want to go ahead and get that downloaded. Secondly, if you want to run the app on your computer using an emulator, you'll need to create an emulator. You're familiar with how to do that in Android Studio. What you might not realize is that we can launch the emulator without actually launching Android Studio. So if you open up your Android Studio window, if you close out any existing projects, you'll get this window here. And under More Actions, there's an option just to go straight to the Virtual Device Manager. And from here, you can go ahead and you can hit the play button to launch your emulator. Now, I already have mine launched just because I wanted to get it going. And so I have mine hanging out right here. Okay. Again, you don't have to use the emulator. You could just use your own phone, but if you wanted to, that is how you could get that going. Secondly, I don't even know what number I'm on, but you want to create a repository in GitHub Desktop that we're going to use with all of our starting React Native projects, just like how we did for Android Studio. And for your git ignore, you want to use the Node template. So I'm going to go into my GitHub Desktop and sorry about that. We're going to make, oh my goodness, we are going to make a new repository, and I'm just going to call this, spell right, React Native small apps. And then the git ignore you want to choose, like I said, is for Node, and then we want to make sure it's in our GitHub folder. So go ahead and create that. And then now we're going to go ahead and we're going to get our VS Code set up. Now, VS Code, many of you might already have this downloaded from previous coding classes you've taken or just from other times you've coded. And what you might not be aware of are some of the helpful extensions that you can use to further customize your coding environment. All right, if you look at this list that I have created right here under VS Code suggestions, I'm going to walk through some of the different settings that I've recommended. So for starters, you want to find the option for the extensions, which is this little button right here. And then there are several different extensions that I'm going to recommend that you install. So let's go ahead and let's get those set up. So I'm going to go over here to extensions. And then this is where you can just type in the field whatever it is. Extensions are essentially extra things that people have created to help enhance your coding environment. So the first one, if we search up React Native, is React Native Tools. And you can see on the list that I gave you, I told you who it's by. This one's by Microsoft. That's the first one that we want. Next, we're going to want React-Native. And then it's going to be this guy right here. And this has a whole bunch of code snippets, kind of like how we used Sout and PSVM in IntelliJ. It'll give us a lot of quick little shortcuts that we can use to start out with code snippets. Another one I like to use is called Prettier. And what this one does is it just formats your code nicely. Next is this material icon theme. And what this does is this uses all the icons that we want from material. And then the last one I like is colorize. And what colorize does is this allows you to actually see the colors when you type the color code. Okay, so after we've done that, now we have to go ahead and update some of our settings. So if you go on the top menu to File, and then to Preferences, and to Settings, here, this is where we can search for different settings. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to search for Format on Save. And we want to go ahead and check this box. And what that's going to do is that's going to use the code formatter that we installed. And whenever we save, it'll nicely format our code. After that, you want to search for Workbench. And if we go to the Workbench, these are all different settings that we can set. And if you scroll all the way down, we're essentially looking for the option where it says Edit in Settings.json. Dun, dun, dun. Like I said, it's way down. And there might be a faster way to get to this file, but there we go. Okay, so we're going to go right here, Edit in Settings.json, and this is to allow us to override those colors. Okay, now these are the default settings that are here, and if you look on the handout that I gave you, these are some settings that I'm going to recommend that you put in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to straight copy this and paste it in here. And it's actually going to go right there. And you'll notice that this format on save is already there, so I can take that one out. All right, so this is what I'm going to use for my settings. Now, you might notice in the handout that I have another setting in there where I have my color theme. If you wanted to change your theme to be a different color palette, light mode, dark mode, whatever, you can go ahead and do that there. So after you've done this, you're going to want to click Control S to save, and then we can close this out. And we can close out our settings, and we've got all of this good to go. Okay. Now, next up, we want to do the following. Now that we have our environment set up the way that we want, I just want to point out a few things here. So first of all, on the left, we have the Explorer. This is where you'll see your file folders, kind of like how we had our project tab in Android Studio. This allows you to search, kind of obvious. This is for GitHub if you wanted to use GitHub controls in the program. I will often just use GitHub Desktop, but this is where you can access that, running and debugging, and then extensions. All right, now up here along this top menu, depending on how wide your screen is, you might see more choices. As your screen gets more narrow, those choices go to the overflow menu, okay? And what we want to do is we want to go ahead and open up a new terminal window. So if you click on these three dots, you'll see there are other options that are hidden, and we want to choose Terminal, New Terminal. All right, now many of the things that we do in this class are benefit from the command line, but we haven't always been able to use the command line. And some of the work that we're going to be doing for React Native is going to require it. So I want to make sure we understand some of those basic commands. So for starters, we need to see if Node is installed on your computer. So if you type node-v, that will check for the version of Node. Now for me, on my computer, I don't have Node installed, so I'm going to have to go ahead and download that. So to download Node, we're going to do the following. If you look on this handout, I have a link here for how to install Node.js, and if you click on that, there's many ways that you can install Node, but to keep it as simple as possible, I have chosen the one for the pre-built installer. And so I'm going to click on this to download, and it's going to get downloaded. And then if I go to my download folders, wrong one. Looks like it's still downloading. I'm going to pause the video. All right, so now that it's finished downloading, I can double click on this, and this will bring up my Node installer. And you just got to go through and accept everything. Just do all the defaults and install. All right, I'm going to pause the video. All right, so now that I see this window, I have finished. I am successfully installed. And now this brings up another terminal window. What I would recommend doing is, let's see, I'm just going to hit enter. Okay, so what is happening? Interesting. Wait for it. All right, well, let's go ahead and I'm going to close my terminal window, and I'm going to close VS Code, and then let's reopen VS Code and go back to a new terminal, and let's check to see if Node has been correctly installed. Yep, there we go. Okay, so now that Node has been installed, I am ready to go ahead and continue with the next steps. I'm going to stop the video and start a new one at this point.